After 32 years of grinding, I had finally cashed out $32 million. I was supposed to be celebrating my retirement, the start of my golden years. But as I stood there, about to give a toast, I realized my own son and his wife didn't want me to have a golden year. They didn't even want me to have another day. This is the story of how my dream retirement party turned into the stage for the most satisfying revenge of my life. If you believe that family should be about love, not greed, hit that subscribe button. The weight of the pen in my hand felt final. It was a Montblanc, a gift from my late wife, Sarah, for my 40th birthday. Its gold nib worn smooth from signing decades of contracts, proposals, and paychecks. Now, it was pressing down on the last document that would ever bear the name of my company. With a slow, deliberate flourish, I signed Nelson Hayes for the last time as CEO of Apex Innovations. The ink, a deep midnight blue, seemed to absorb the light in the room, sealing away 32 years of my life, a lifetime of grinding, of 80-hour weeks, of missed school plays and rushed family dinners, all culminating in this one silent moment. 32 years, $32 million. The symmetry wasn't lost on me. I leaned back, and the old leather of my executive chair groaned a familiar, comforting sound. For years, this office had been my command center, a symphony of ringing phones, urgent meetings, and the constant hum of ambition. Today, it was a tomb. The desks in the open-plan space beyond my glass wall were barren. The powerful computers that once crunched endless lines of code now just dark. Reflective squares? The silence was absolute, broken only by the quiet whisper of the air conditioning. It was the sound of an ending, and, I hoped, the sound of a beginning. My gaze drifted to the silver-framed photograph on the corner of my desk, its surface gleaming under the recessed lighting. It was Sarah, her arm draped over the shoulders of a much younger, much happier version of me. Between us, perched on my shoulders with a gap-toothed grin, was our son, Leo. We were at a company picnic, one of the first ones, held in a public park with cheap hot dogs and store-bought coleslaw. I remembered the warmth of the sun that day, the smell of freshly cut grass, and the weight of Leo's small body as he squealed with laughter. Sarah's eyes in the picture seemed to find mine across the years, sparkling with a love so fierce and a belief in me so absolute, it still made my breath catch. "See, honey," she seemed to say, "I told you you'd build an empire." A familiarace, dull and persistent, bloomed in my chest. She was supposed to be here to see it. Our plan had been to cash out, buy a small vineyard in Napa, and spend our days growing old together, arguing about the best way to prune grapes. But a cluster of cells, too small to see, had a different plan. And for the last 15 years, it had been just me and Leo. I'd tried to be both father and mother, to be the tough CEO in the boardroom and the comforting dad at the parent-teacher conference. I'd poured every ounce of myself into those two things, my company and my son. I thought I'd raised him right. I thought the sacrifices had been worth it. The peaceful silence was shattered. The heavy oak door to my office didn't just open, it flew inward, crashing against the rubber stopper with a violent thud that reverberated through the floor. My son, Leo, stood in the doorway, his chest heaving. His usually immaculate suit was rumpled, his tie loosened, and his face was a mottled, unhealthy shade of red. Behind him, like a perfectly composed statue in the midst of an earthquake, was my daughter-in-law, Chloe. She slipped inside and closed the door behind them with a soft, deliberate click, a sound of chilling finality. "Dad," Leo gasped out, striding across the room. He bypassed the visitors' chairs and planted both of his hands on my desk, leaning over the polished mahogany that separated us. His knuckles were white. "I just got off the phone with Mark in legal. He said you closed the deal today." His voice was raw, accusatory. I kept my own voice level. "I did. This afternoon. I was going to call you tonight. After everything was finalized, I wanted to tell you and Chloe at the same time." He let out a bark of laughter, a harsh, ugly sound that didn't suit him. "Right. After it was all done, Dad, I need $5 million, and I need it now." The number just hung there in the air, obscene and absurd. $5 million. He said it with the casual desperation of a man asking for a loan to cover his rent. Not a sum that could buy a small island. I stared into his eyes, searching for the boy I knew, the kid who once cried for an hour because he'd accidentally stepped on a snail. I couldn't find him. This man was a stranger, his eyes hard and calculating, reflecting the city lights from the window behind me. As the silence thickened, I became aware of the scent of Chloe's perfume. It was expensive, complex, a cloud of jasmine and something muskier, and it felt utterly alien in the sterile, masculine space of my office. She hadn't moved from her spot by the door, her posture perfect, her designer handbag clutched in one hand. She was a spectator. But I knew, with a sudden, sinking certainty, that she was no mere bystander. She was the director of this entire, ugly play. "This isn't a friendly request. Dad," Leo pressed on, his voice dropping to an intense whisper. He leaned in closer, his own scent of stale coffee and anxiety washing over me. "This is what I'm owed. It's my share. I have investors breathing down my neck for a new startup. I have debts you don't even know about. You owe me this." Owed him. The phrase twisted like a knife in my gut. Every check for tuition at his private university, the down payment on the house he and Chloe lived in, the endless stream of support for his half-dozen failed business ventures. Was none of that enough? I had spent a lifetime building a foundation for him, and all he could see was a vault to be plundered. I took a slow breath, steepling my fingers on the desk to hide the fact that they were starting to tremble. "Leo, this money is not a windfall. It's my entire future. It's the price for every single sacrifice Sarah and I made. It's my retirement. It's my peace of mind for the next 20, maybe 30 years. "Peace of mind," he scoffed, straightening up and gesturing wildly around the empty office. "Look at this place. You've had your time. You built your empire. What do you need $32 million for? To buy a new set of golf clubs every week." "It's about security," I said, my voice hardening. The father in me was screaming. But the CEO who had stared down corporate raiders was taking over. "We can discuss your business idea. You can present me with a formal plan, and I will consider it as a serious investment. But I will not be bullied into handing over a fortune because you're in some trouble." Just as I finished speaking, Chloe moved. Her heels made no sound on the thick rug as she glided to Leo's side. She placed a delicate, perfectly manicured hand on his rigid shoulder. It wasn't a gesture of comfort. It was a signal, an affirmation. "Hair eyes. cool and gray as a winter sky. At mine, there was no empathy in them, no shared family feeling. There was only appraisal, as if she were estimating the value of the paintings on my wall. Leo seemed to draw power from her touch. His spine stiffened. The desperate, frantic energy drained away, replaced by something colder, something rehearsed. "Fine," he said, the word clipped and sharp. "Have it your way. But don't come crying to me when you're all alone in your big, empty house. If I don't see that money in my account by Friday, I don't even think about seeing our faces at your retirement party on Saturday." The threat, so petty and yet so profound, sucked the air from my lungs. He was weaponizing his own presence in my life. He was making family conditional. "Leo, don't do this," I said, my voice barely a whisper. But he was already turning, pulling away from the desk as if it were contaminated. Chloe gave me one last, lingering look, a look of pure, unadulterated triumph, before she turned and walked with him to the door. He didn't look back. The door slammed shut, the sound echoing through the office, through the building, through the hollow space that had just opened up in my chest. I sat there for a long time, the silence pressing in on me. It was no longer the silence of accomplishment. It was the silence of abandonment. My perfect day, the pinnacle of my career, had been irrevocably tainted in the span of 5 minutes. I slowly reached out and traced the outline of Sarah's face in the photograph. Her smile was a painful reminder of a past that felt more distant than ever. I had spent my whole life thinking I was building a legacy for my son. But looking at the closed door, I had the terrifying realization that I hadn't been building a legacy at all. I'd been building a cage, and the person I had trapped inside wasn't him. It was me. The retirement party was meant to be my first taste of freedom. Now, all I could taste was the bitter poison of betrayal. The slam of the office door echoed in my ears long after they were gone. I sat there, motionless, as the last rays of the Friday sun bled across the sky, painting the sterile glass and steel of the city in hues of orange and bruised purple. The photograph on my desk seemed to mock me, a relic from a life I no longer recognized. $32 million. It felt less like a triumph and more like a target painted on my back. The rest of that day passed in a blur of hollow motions. I drove home on autopilot, the familiar streets of our suburban Ohio town, feeling alien and hostile. I walked through the empty rooms of the house Sarah and I had built. Each piece of furniture, each photograph on the wall, a testament to a family that now felt like a fiction. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, the scene in my office replaying in my mind on an endless, torturous loop. Leo's angry, entitled face. Chloe's cool, reptilian Gaza. The poison wasn't just in their words. It was in the very air I was breathing. By Saturday evening, I had managed to construct a fragile mask of normalcy. The caterers had arrived, transforming my spacious backyard and patio into something out of a magazine. White linen tablecloths billowed gently in the warm September breeze. Hundreds of tiny fairy lights were strung through the branches of the old oak tree, casting a magical, dappled glow over everything. A 3-piece jazz trio played softly in the corner, their smooth, melancholic notes weaving through the low hum of conversation and the clinking of glasses. The air smelled of grilled rosemary lamb, expensive perfume, and the clean, earthy scent of freshly cut grass. It was perfect. A perfect lit. I moved through the crowd, a glass of amber liquid, my favorite 20-year-old single malt in hand. I smiled. I shook hands. I accepted congratulations from old friends and former business rivals alike. You earned it. Nelson, one of them boomed, clapping me on the shoulder. I smiled back, the expression feeling like a poorly fitting suit. Earned what I wanted to ask. The right to be seen as a walking, talking ATM by my own son. But I just nodded and said, "It's been a long road." Charles? Each interaction was a performance, and I was getting tired. The knot of dread in my stomach, a cold and heavy stone since yesterday, seemed to tighten with every passing minute. I kept glancing towards the front gate, half hoping, half fearing they wouldn't show up. I didn't know which outcome would be worse. And then I saw them. They walked in through the wrought iron side gate, momentarily silhouetted against the setting sun. Leo looked pale and exhausted, the aggressive confidence from yesterday completely gone. He was wearing the expensive suit I'd bought him for his last birthday, but it seemed to hang on him, as if he'd shrunk. Chloe, by contrast, was radiant. She wore a simple but elegant emerald green dress that complemented her auburn hair, a picture of grace and sophistication. She held a bottle of vintage champagne in one hand, gift wrapped in gold foil. They looked like the perfect, supportive family. Another lie. They made their way towards me, and a small pocket of silence fell around us as nearby guests watched. Leo wouldn't meet my eyes. He stared at a spot somewhere over my shoulder, his jaw working. "Dad," he mumbled, his voice thick. "About yesterday. I was a complete jerk. I was stressed. I wasn't thinking. I am so sorry." Before I could respond, Chloe stepped forward, her smile blindingly bright. She placed a hand on my arm, her touch feather-light. "What he's trying to say, Nelson, is that we are both incredibly sorry. We are just so immensely proud of you. And sometimes big emotions get the better of us. We shouldn't have let our own stresses cast a shadow on your incredible achievement." She leaned in and gave me a brief, air kiss on the cheek. Her perfume was the same one from yesterday, jasmine and betrayal. "We would never miss this for the world," she whispered, her voice oozing sincerity. A part of me, the foolish, hopeful father part, wanted desperately to believe them. I saw the genuine remorse in Leo's eyes, and I saw the flawless performance from Chloe, and my heart, weary from the conflict, yearned for peace. Maybe I had been too hard. Maybe he was just a young man under immense pressure, saying stupid things he didn't mean. Maybe Chloe, for all her ambition, was actually a good influence, steering him back onto the right path. "It's all right, son," I said, my voice softer than I intended. "Let's just forget it. I'm glad you're here." The relief on Leo's face was palpable. He finally met my gaze, his eyes shining with gratitude. "Thanks, Dad." Chloe's smile widened. The crisis was averted. The performance was a success. For the next hour, she was the model daughter-in-law. She moved through the party with an effortless charm, introducing herself to my friends, laughing at their old stories about me, making sure everyone's glass was full. She'd bring me a fresh plate of hors d'oeuvre, touching my arm affectionately and saying, "You need to eat something. Nelson, you're the man of the hour." I watched her, a reluctant admiration mixing with my unease. She was a master puppeteer, and everyone at this party including my own son, was dancing on her strings, and against my better judgment, that little seed of hope inside me began to sprout. Maybe it really will be okay. I thought, maybe this is the start of a new chapter for all of us. It was then that my phone buzzed in my pocket. I glanced at the screen. It was my lawyer, David, probably just calling to officially confirm the final wire transfer had gone through. I excused myself from a conversation with my old CFO, holding up the phone as an explanation. I have to take this. Be right back. The music and chatter of the party faded as I stepped through the French doors and into the quiet, cool interior of my house. I walked down the hall to my study, wanting a bit of privacy. It was my sanctuary, filled with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, worn leather armchairs, and the faint, pleasant smell of old books and wood polish. I had left the door slightly ajar to let in some of the ambient light from the hallway. David. Hey, I said, sinking into my desk chair. Everything go through, okay? Like clockwork. Nelson. His cheerful voice came through the phone. The Eagle has landed. Congratulations. My friend, you're officially a man of leisure. I chuckled, a genuine sound of relief for the first time all evening. Thanks. David, it doesn't feel real yet. Well, go enjoy your party. You deserve it. We'll talk Monday. Will do? I said, and ended the call. I sat there for a moment, savoring the quiet, the feeling of finality. A real smile touched my lips. I took a deep breath, feeling the tension in my shoulders begin to ease. It was over. The work was done. My family was here. Everything was going to be all right. I stood up, ready to rejoin my own celebration, and through the crack in the study door, my eyes fell upon the small, granite-topped bar I'd set up in the living room just outside. My specific glass, a heavy, square-cut crystal tumbler, was sitting right where I'd left it, the ice cubes slowly melting into the dark gold of the single malt. And then I saw her, Chloe. She was standing by the bar, her back mostly to me. She glanced quickly over her shoulder. A furtive, bird-like movement, checking the patio and the hallway. She thought she was alone. My hand, reaching for the doorknob, froze in midair. My heart gave a sudden, hard jolt in my chest. She reached into her small, impossibly expensive clutch purse and pulled out a small, neatly folded piece of paper. My breath caught in my throat. My blood ran cold. The quiet hum of the house was suddenly replaced by a deafening roar in my ears. With deft, practiced fingers, she unfolded the paper over my glass. A stream of fine, white powder cascaded down, hitting the surface of the whiskey. For a split second, it clouded the liquid, turning it milky and opaque, before it began to dissolve, vanishing into the amber depths. It was like watching a ghost disappear. She didn't spill a single grain. Her movements were precise, economical, and utterly devoid of emotion. She was as calm as if she were adding sugar to a cup of coffee. She picked up a silver swizzle stick from the bar, gave the drink a quick dot, efficient stir, and then wiped the stick clean on a cocktail napkin. Then, she refolded the empty paper packet, took one last look around, and tucked it, along with the used napkin and swizzle stick, deep into the soil of a large potted fiddle-leaf fig standing in the corner. The evidence was gone, swallowed by the earth. I stood there, paralyzed, the phone slipping from my numb fingers and landing silently on the thick Persian rug. The entire sequence couldn't have taken more than 15 seconds. 15 seconds to plan a murder. 15 seconds to erase a life. My life. The pretty, smiling mask was gone. In that moment, through that narrow crack in the door, I saw the real Chloe. Cold. Calculating. A predator. The realization crashed over me not in a wave of anger, but in a silent, soul-crushing tsunami. The confrontation in my office wasn't about getting a piece of the pie. It was never about a $5 million startup. It was about getting all of it. This wasn't a desperate plea from a son in trouble. This was a meticulously planned assassination, and my own child was her willing, or unwilling, accomplice. The pain was a physical thing, a white-hot agony that ripped through my chest, stealing all the air from my lungs. This was a betrayal so profound, so monstrous, that my mind could barely comprehend it. But then, something else rose up through the pain. It was cold and hard and sharp as a shard of ice. It was the same instinct that had helped me survive boardroom ambushes and hostile takeovers for 3 decades. The grief was still there. A screaming wound deep inside me. But I walled it off, packed it in ice. The father was gone. The CEO was back in charge. I took one slow, silent breath. Then another. I bent down and picked up my phone. My movement steady. I straightened my suit jacket and ran a hand over my hair. I pulled on the mask of the genial host, the happy retiree, and made it fit perfectly. I pushed open the study door and stepped out into the hallway. A calm, pleasant smile fixed on my face. Through the living room, I could see her. She had already moved away from the bar and was talking to one of my oldest friends, laughing at something he said. Her head tilted at that charming angle. She did so well. She was a black widow, weaving a beautiful web. She had no idea I'd seen everything. She had no idea the fly had just become the spider. A plan, cold and clear and brutal, began to form in my mind. She wanted to play for the highest stakes. Fine. Let the games begin. I pushed the study door open, and the sounds of the party washed over me once more. The gentle jazz, the murmur of laughter, the clinking of ice in glasses. Just moments ago, these were the sounds of celebration. Now, they sounded like a funeral dirge. Every note from the saxophone seemed to mock me. Every laugh felt like a dagger. The beautiful, magical world the caterers had created had curdled into a grotesque stage set for a tragedy. My tragedy. I fixed the pleasant, meaningless smile on my face, a mask I had perfected over 30 years of business negotiations, and stepped back into the fray. My movements were deliberate, unhurried. I couldn't afford to show a single crack in the facade. My first target was the bar. My second was Chloe's father, Frank. I saw him standing near the patio, engaged in a conversation about golf swings with a couple of my former board members. He was a good man. Frank, a retired high school history teacher, kind, unassuming, and utterly blind to the viper he and his wife had raised. A pang of guilt struck me for what I was about to do, for the collateral damage he was about to become. But it was a fleeting emotion, incinerated by the cold, hard fury that was now powering my every move. He was a pawn in her game. I would simply move him to my side of the board. I navigated the clusters of guests, nodding and smiling, my eyes locked on my objective, the heavy, square-cut crystal tumbler sitting on the granite bar top. It looked so innocent. The whiskey inside, glowing like liquid gold under the ambient light. A chalice of death. "Nelson, there you are," a voice boomed. It was my old friend, Michael. We were just about to send out a search party. I clapped him on the shoulder, the gesture feeling strangely disconnected from my body. Just had to take a quick call from the lawyers. "Mike, all good news." My voice sounded normal, even jovial. It was a terrifying discovery. How easily the lies could flow when survival was at stake. As I got closer to the bar, I saw Chloe watching me. She was still talking to my friend, but her eyes, sharp and intelligent, flickered towards me, then to the glass, then back to me. A slight, almost imperceptible smile played on her lips. It was a smile of anticipation, of victory. She thought the trap was set. She had no idea I was about to walk right past it and set one of my own. I reached the bar and picked up the glass. The crystal felt cold against my skin, the chill seeping into my very bones. I swirled the contents, watching the liquid coat the sides. For a terrifying second, my resolve wavered. What if I was wrong? What if I'd imagined it? But the memory of the white powder vanishing into the whiskey was seared onto the inside of my eyelids. It was real. This was real. I turned and made a beeline for Frank. "Frank," I called out, my voice hearty and warm. Just the man I wanted to see. He turned, a broad, friendly smile spreading across his face. "Nelson, what a night. Susan and I are just so thrilled for you. Truly." "Thank you, my friend. Thank you," I said, stepping into a small group. "Listen, I just remembered something hilarious. You remember that disastrous Dallas contract pitch back in '08, the one where the fire alarm went off in the middle of my presentation?" Frank's eyes lit up with recognition. He loved this story. "Do I ever? You handled it like a pro. But I've never seen a man sweat through a suit that fast." I chuckled, playing my part. Sweat. I was practically swimming in it. But the best part, the part I never told anyone, was what happened right before. I was so nervous. I'd spilled coffee all over my tie just minutes before going in. So I borrowed a tie from the lost and found at the hotel. It had little cartoon cowboys on it. As I delivered the punchline, Frank and the others roared with laughter. It was the perfect moment, the perfect distraction in that split second, as their attention was completely focused on the image of me in a cartoon tie. My hands moved with a fluid, practiced grace. I extended my glass towards Frank, as if to toast our shared memory. My left hand came up, gesturing as I spoke, and in one seamless motion, I took his identical, untouched glass from his hand and pressed my poisoned one into his palm. It was a simple switch, a magician's trick performed in plain sight. "Here," I said, my voice still full of mirth. "Take a sip of this. You'll need it for the rest of the story. The cartoon cowboys were the least of my problems." He took the glass without a second thought, his eyes still crinkling with laughter. "Don't leave us hanging. Nelson." The swap was complete. The bomb was no longer in my hands. I held his clean glass, and he held my death sentence. I continued the story, embellishing details, my mind 1,000 miles away, my senses on high alert. I was aware of every breath, every shifting shadow. I could feel Chloe's eyes on us from across the lawn. I imagined her satisfaction, watching her father-in-law and her own father laughing together. one of them holding the key to her new life. Finally, she began to move towards us, her patience clearly wearing thin. Her smile was still in place, but there was a tightness around her eyes. "Nelson, honey," she said, her voice like velvet-wrapped steel. "Everyone's waiting. Don't you think it's time for your speech?" It was a command disguised as a suggestion. She was getting anxious. She needed the final act of her play to commence. She needed me to drink the toast. "You're absolutely right, my dear," I said, turning to her. I gave her a warm smile, a smile that didn't reach my frozen eyes. The man of the hour should probably say a few words. I handed my now empty glass Frank's original glass to a passing waiter and walked towards the small, temporary stage that had been set up near the edge of the patio. The jazz trio faded out. A hush fell over the crowd of 100 people. My friends, my colleagues, my family, my executioners. I stepped up onto the stage, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. This was it. No turning back. I looked out at the sea of expectant faces, all bathed in the soft, deceptive glow of the fairy lights. I saw Leo, standing beside his wife, looking proud, and I saw Chloe, her eyes fixed on me, a predatory gleam in their depths. And next to them, I saw Frank, casually holding the poisoned tumbler, completely unaware of the role he was about to play. "Thank you," I began, my voice steady and clear, amplified by the small microphone. "Thank you all for coming here tonight to celebrate this milestone with me. 32 years. It's a long time. It's a lifetime." I started slowly, talking about the early days of the company, the struggles, the triumphs. I told a few well-worn, humorous anecdotes that got the expected laughs. I was lulling them. I was setting the scene. I could feel Chloe relaxing, her posture softening. She thought this was the standard, boring retirement speech. "I built this company from nothing," I continued, my gaze sweeping the crowd before landing on my son. "I built it on a foundation of hard work, integrity, and, most importantly, trust. Trust is a fragile thing. It takes a lifetime to build. But it can be shattered in a single moment. By a single act of betrayal." The air shifted. The mood went from celebratory to tense in the space of a heartbeat. The smiles on people's faces began to fade. I saw Leo frown, a flicker of confusion in his eyes. I saw Chloe's back straighten, her smile becoming a thin, hard line. She knew this wasn't in her script. My eyes left Leo and locked directly onto hers. I held her gaze, refusing to let her look away. "They say that your family is your greatest asset, the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally, but sometimes the people closest to you, the ones who call you dad or honey, they aren't an asset. They are a liability. Sometimes they don't see you. They only see what you have. They see a walking bank account, an obstacle." A collective, uneasy murmur rippled through the crowd. No one knew what was happening, but they knew it was something terrible. Chloe's face had gone pale, a stark contrast to her vibrant green dress. Leo looked utterly bewildered, glancing from me to his wife and back again, his mouth slightly agape. I let the silence hang for a moment longer, a suffocating blanket of tension. Then I delivered the killing blow, my voice dropping to a low, chilling, and perfectly clear tone, like For instance, I said, my eyes still boring into hers. When your own daughter-in-law decides your retirement is taking too long, when she decides she's entitled to your life's work, and the only thing standing in her way is your life, when she tries to poison your drink at your own retirement party, just minutes ago, in your own home. A collective gasp went through the crowd. It was a sharp, sibilant sound, like the drawing of 100 blades, all lies, every single pair. Swung from me to Chloe, she was frozen, a statue of horrified disbelief. Her mask of civility finally, irrevocably shattered. "Dad, what are you talking about?" she stammered, her voice a high-pitched, unnatural squeak. Are you feeling okay? Maybe you've had too much to drink?" She tried for a nervous laugh, but it came out as a strangled croak. "Oh, have I asked?" My voice dangerously soft. My gaze slowly moved from her to her father. I raised my hand and pointed, my fingers shaking ever so slightly. Not from fear, but from a surge of pure, unadulterated adrenaline. "Then let's find out. Let's have the contents of that glass tested," I declared, my voice booming in the dead silence. "The one my good friend Frank is holding right now. The very same glass, Chloe, that you so carefully tipped your little packet of white powder into not 15 minutes ago." Frank's head snapped down, his eyes widening in sheer horror as he stared at the crystal tumbler in his hand as if it were a live scorpion. Chloe's gaze followed mine, and when she saw the glass in her own father's hand, a guttural sound of pure, primal panic escaped her throat. Her face, already pale, turned a ghastly, bloodless white. She was trapped. She was cornered, and the entire world was watching. The world seemed to shrink, collapsing into the space of a few square feet on my patio. All the light, all the sound, all the energy of 100 people converged on that one single point, the poisoned glass in Frank's hand. Chloe stared at it, her face a mask of pure, animalistic terror. The carefully constructed facade of the charming, sophisticated daughter-in-law had been incinerated, leaving behind only the raw, ugly panic of a cornered predator. Her mind was clearly racing, searching for an escape route where none existed. The evidence was right there, held aloft for the whole world to see, in the hand of the one person she never would have suspected, her own father. Then, she moved. It wasn't a decision, it was an impulse. A desperate, last-ditch lunga-driven by pure survival instinct. "Dad, let me see," that she shrieked, her voice cracking, unrecognizable. She lunged towards Frank, her arm outstretched, not in a gesture to take the glass, but to strike it. Frank, bewildered and horrified, instinctively flinched back, but he wasn't fast enough. Her hand, a blur of emerald green fabric and pale skin, didn't grab the glass. She slapped at it, a clumsy, violent motion, her manicured nails striking the crystal with a sickening thud. For a heartbeat, the glass seemed to hang in the air, a perfect, frozen tableau of destruction. Then, gravity took hold. It tumbled from Frank's nerveless fingers, arcing through the soft glow of the fairy lights before it met the hard flagstone of the patio. It didn't shatter with a loud crash. It was a sharper, more intimate sound, a crystalline crack that was horrifyingly final, a sound that sliced through the stunned silence of the party like a gunshot. The heavy crystal tumbler exploded on impact, sending a spray of whiskey, melted ice, and shards of glass across the stone. The liquid, my would-be death sentence, splashed in a dark, accusing stain, soaking into the grout lines before anyone could even react. A few rogue ice cubes skittered across the patio, coming to rest near the shoes of my silent, staring guests. The evidence was gone, obliterated, and in its destruction, her guilt was signed, sealed, and delivered. A silence so profound it felt like a physical weight fell over the backyard. The only sound was the faint, indifferent chirping of crickets in the bushes. No one moved. No one breathed. It was a moment of collective, horrifying clarity. In that single, disperate, act, Chloe had confessed to everything. Her frantic attempt to destroy the proof was the most damning proof of all. I looked at my son. The confusion had vanished from Leo's face, replaced by a wave of dawning, sickening understanding. He stared at the glittering shards of glass on the ground. Then his gaze lifted to his wife. I watched the love in his eyes die. It was a slow, agonizing death, extinguished by the cold, hard reality of what he was seeing. Disbelief gave way to revulsion, then to a deep, gut-wrenching shame. He looked at her as if for the first time, and he finally saw what I had seen. He saw the monster beneath the beautiful skin. Chloe seemed to realize what she'd done. A low, wretched sob escaped her lips. She looked around at the sea of faces. My friends, her parents, her husband, and saw only condemnation. The judgment in 100 pairs of eyes was a physical force, pressing in on her, crushing her. Oh, she stammered, her hands fluttering uselessly at her sides. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm just so clumsy. I didn't mean to. The lie was so pathetic, so transparently false, that it was almost pitiful. No one believed her. No one even pretended to. I finally allowed myself to move. I took a slow, deliberate step forward, my shoes crunching softly on the grass at the edge of the stage. All the rage, the pain, the adrenaline that had been coursing through me had receded, leaving behind a profound, glacial calm. I was no longer a victim. I was a survivor. I looked directly at her, not with anger, but with a weary finality. You don't need to say anything else. Chloe, I said, my voice quiet, yet carrying to every corner of the silent yard. You've said more than enough. That was it. My final judgment, acquis dismissal, it was over. Leo finally broke his paralysis. He moved with a stiff, robotic motion, his face a pale, grim mask. He grabbed Chloe's arm. His grip not gentle or supportive, but firm, like a warden handling a prisoner. We're leaving, he said, his voice a dead, hollow rasp. She tried to resist, to pull away, but his grip was iron. He began to pull her through the crowd. It was the longest walk of their lives, a walk of shame through a silent, parting sea of their former friends and family. No one spoke. No one looked away. They were forced to endure the full weight of their public disgrace. Every single excruciating step of the way. I watched them go, my son dragging the woman who had destroyed him out of my life, their figures shrinking as they passed through the side gate and were swallowed by the darkness beyond. The moment they were gone, a breath I didn't even realize I had been holding escaped my lungs in a long, shuddering sigh. The tension that had held my body rigid for the past hour drained away, leaving my legs feeling weak, my hands trembling with the aftershock of the adrenaline. I gripped the microphone stand for support. The cool metal, a grounding presence in a world that had tilted on its axis. The spell was broken. A low murmur spread through the guests as they began to talk in hushed, shocked tones. Frank and Susan, Chloe's parents, were still standing, frozen by the patio, their faces etched with a grief so profound it was painful to witness. Susan had a hand pressed to her mouth, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Frank just stared at the dark stain on the stones where the glass had shattered. His face, a ruin of shame and disbelief. He finally looked up, his eyes meeting mine. They were the eyes of a broken man. He and Susan walked towards me, their steps slow and heavy. "Nelson," Frank began, his voice thick with unshed tears. We, there are no words. We had no idea. We are so sorry. We are so ashamed." I looked at these two good, simple people whose lives had been upended by the poison their own daughter carried inside her. "This is not your fault, Frank," I said, and I meant it. "You didn't do this. Don't carry her guilt for her." He just shook his head, unable to speak, and led his weeping wife away. Their own night of celebration turned into a living nightmare. Slowly, my friends began to approach the stage, not with the boisterous congratulations from earlier, but with a quiet, solemn respect. Michael, my old friend, came first. He didn't say anything. He just put a hand on my shoulder and squeezed, his eyes conveying a depth of understanding and admiration that no words could. And one by one, others did the same. They came not to celebrate my retirement, but to bear witness to my survival. They had seen the ugliest side of human nature tonight, but they had also seen a man refuse to be its victim. The party ended quickly after that. People left quietly, offering soft-spoken words of support as they went. The caterers, with professional discretion, packed up their things and disappeared. The jazz trio had long since fallen silent. Soon, it was just me, alone in my backyard, surrounded by the ghosts of a celebration that never was. The fairy lights still twinkled in the oak tree, but their magic was gone. They looked cold and lonely now. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel victorious. I just felt quiet. The gaping, screaming wound of betrayal was still there, but the immediate threat was gone. The poison had been exposed. The house was mine again. My life was mine again. The next morning, I woke to the sound of birdsong. The sun was streaming through my bedroom window, and for the first time, in what felt like an eternity, the knot of dread in my stomach was gone. I made a pot of coffee and took it out to the patio. The caterers had been impeccable. There was no sign of the previous night's drama, save for a faint, dark stain on the flagstone that I knew would probably never completely fade. I sat there, sipping my coffee, watching the sun climb higher in the sky. I thought about the $32 million sitting in my bank account. Yesterday, it had felt like a curse, the catalyst for all this pain. But today, it felt different. It wasn't the source of my happiness. It wasn't the prize. The prize was this quiet moment, this peace, this freedom, the freedom from manipulation, from greed, from the exhausting performance of a family that had ceased to be real. I had lost a son, at least for now, but I had reclaimed myself, and in the quiet morning light that felt like the most valuable asset of all, I, Nelson Hayes, 65 years old, had finally learned that true wealth is not measured by what you have, but by what you are willing to walk away from to protect your own soul.